3 spine-chilling true encounters that expose sinister secrets of haunting road trips. The Johnson family thought they were in for an adventure, one that would stitch back the seams of their frayed lives. But little did they know, fate had a more twisted tale in store for them, a reality woven with shadows and unsettling secrets. Mark, Lisa, Sarah, and Jake piled into their minivan, hearts light and backpacks heavy with homemade snacks and nostalgic playlists. As they cruised through Ohio's familiar highways, the fading sun cast long shadows, whispering tales of impending dread. Their laughter echoed within the car, but it didn't take long for unease to creep in when they left the beaten path, venturing into the murky backroads. A thick fog rolled in, heavy and oppressive. Towns came and went, each more dilapidated than the last, gas stations standing as eerie monuments of neglect. No other travelers. Just silence and the eerie feeling they were being watched. "Mom, it's getting kinda creepy," Jake muttered, peering out at a quaint town frozen in time, broken signs and rusted swings hanging lifelessly in playgrounds. Mark chalked it up to a typical family road trip experience, but Lisa couldn't shake the growing chill wrapping around her heart. They pulled into one ghostly gas station, its decaying pumps a stark contrast to their cheerful destination playlist. The windows shattered as if the whole place had given up hope. Suddenly, gravel crunched violently beneath their feet at a lonely rest area. That's when the dark, rusted van rolled up beside them. A gaunt figure emerged, his sunken eyes and disquieting smile sending shivers down Mark's spine. "I know things about you," he said, his voice a serpentine whisper that curled into their minds, wrapping tight around their hearts. Mark's pulse quickened. Lisa instinctively grabbed the kids close, each tremor vibrating through her hand. Jake's eyes widened. "Dad! Look!" He pointed towards the van's slanted windows. There, taped haphazardly, were missing persons flyers. Familiar faces from their own neighborhood. Terror washed over Mark. Adrenaline surged as he shoved his family back towards the safety of their minivan, the stranger's eyes burning holes into their backs. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As darkness fell, they sought refuge in a dusty motel, its walls cloaked in whispers, a musty smell of fear lurking in the corners of chipped paint. The flickering neon sign outside buzzed ominously, sending jolts of unease through Lisa and Mark. Their hearts raced when Jake's innocent voice broke the tense silence. "Did you hear what those people were saying? Something about no one leaving town at night." The air turned ice cold. When they approached the friendly but watchful manager, he dismissed their concerns with a smile that sent shivers down their spines. Too wide, too knowing. As the night dragged on, the ominous tension thickened. They felt it, the cold eyes watching them from the shadows. Just when they thought they might escape this nightmare, a police car cruised in, with an officer who seemed all too familiar with the unsettling peculiarities of the place. Were they there to help, or were they part of the secrets that loomed? As thunder rumbled overhead, the family huddled together, the weight of dread pressing against them, a sinister undercurrent threading through their attempt to reconnect. In trying to reclaim joy, they had stumbled into a dark reality, one that now threatened not only their vacation but their very lives. Would they find a way out, or were they destined to become part of the town's haunting history? The creaking floorboards echoed like whispers in the dark as the Johnson family lay awake in their motel room, their breaths mingling with the heavy, stale air. Mark could feel the weight of the night pressing down on him. He risked a glance out the grimy window, peering into the thick darkness beyond. The streetlights flickered, casting distorted shadows that danced unnaturally against the broken pavement. "Should we call someone?" Lisa's voice was barely more than a whisper, panic flickering behind her eyes. She clutched her phone, as if the small device held the power to cut through the suffocating tension that filled the air. "Just give it a moment," Mark replied, his heart racing. He could hear thunder rumbling in the distance, a low growl that filled the silence. Another crash of thunder shook the room as a sudden blaring horn erupted outside. The Johnsons jumped, instinctively clutching each other tighter. A moment later, the sound of gravel crunching under heavy tires came closer, reverberating through the stillness. Mark shot up, peeking through the curtains just in time to see the rusted van from earlier pull up across the lot. The gaunt figure was back. He stepped into the light, his silhouette slicing through the gloom, an unsettling grin stretching across his face. Mark's stomach twisted with dread. What does he want? Sarah's eyes were wide, watching as the man's gaze seemed to roam the motel ground as if searching for something or someone. He's just some crazy guy, Mark reassured them, but his voice lacked conviction. Fear seeped through the cracks of his brave facade. Another clap of thunder made the lights flicker. The neon sign outside sputtered, bathing their room in brief flashes of sickly green. In the dark, Lisa reached for Mark's hand, her fingers trembling. What if he knows we saw the flyers? As if on cue, a soft tap echoed 3 sharp knocks right at their door. They froze, their hearts pounding in unison, every instinct screaming to stay silent. Stay back, Mark hissed, letting go of Lisa's hand to edge toward the door. The cold metal knob felt foreign in his grasp, his hands slick with perspiration. Who is it? He called out, trying to mask the quaver in his voice. Just a friend, came the chilling reply, too smooth, too familiar. Images of the flyers and the gaunt figure filled his mind, and the weight of the truth crushed him. He couldn't let them in. He couldn't. Behind him, Lisa snatched up the phone, fumbling in her panic. I'm calling the police. Don't. You can't. Mark felt the walls closing in. He spun back toward the door just as a board creaked ominously behind him, revealing a hairline crack of light separating the room from the darkened hallway. Suddenly, another loud noise pierced the air, a crash. Something shattered outside. Mark's heart dropped as he hurried to shut the curtains. In the terror-fueled chaos, he caught a glimpse of Jake, wide-eyed and pale, eyeing the door. What if he comes in? Then we'll fight, Mark said, his voice steadier than he felt. But we're not safe here. We need to leave. Lisa shouted, panic spilling over. Leave? Where? Mark responded, voice rising. Into what? That hell outside. We don't even know who's waiting for us. But the pounding grew louder, 4 knocks now, demanding. The figure's voice slithered through the door, taunting. I know where you are, and you can't hide forever. Heart racing, Mark's eyes darted to the window. The van's headlights lit up, illuminating the parking lot in a ghostly glow. The figure's shadow loomed larger, more menacing. As the thunder rumbled overhead, drowning the family in a sensation of impending doom, Mark realized this night could become their darkest nightmare unless they found a way out. Would the darkness outside swallow them whole, or was there a flicker of hope left to grasp? Would they confront the monster at their door, or would they run into the very night that promised no safety? The room pulsed with anxiety, each harsh knock on the door echoing like a death sentence. Mark's mind raced. The figure's voice slithered in, wrapping around him like chains. You can't hide forever. It was a promise and a threat all at once. Mark, we need to move. Lisa's voice trembled, drowning under the relentless pounding. He could see her eyes darting around the room, desperate for escape. Jake pressed close, shaking like a leaf. Shoo! Mark hissed, trying to drown out the fear suffocating him. He had to think. They needed a plan, and quick. He glanced toward the window, the headlights of the rusted van still illuminated the parking lot, casting eerie shapes that flickered in and out of view like specters. Mark, he's going to get in. Sarah whimpered, her small voice cracking, and that sound sent a fresh wave of cold dread coursing through him. He bit back fear, he couldn't break down now. Then, from behind the door came a sudden silence. A breath-holding stillness that felt like an insidious prelude. His hand trembled on the doorknob, and for a moment, he thought perhaps the figure had given up. His heartbeat echoed loudly, a drum signaling both hope and doom. A beat later, a horrible scratching sound replaced the silence, nails raking against the wood. It was insistent, merciless. An animalistic growl slipped through the cracks, low and rumbling, and Mark felt it vibrate in his bones. The fear that pulsed in the room tightened its grip, squeezing the air from his lungs. "Mark!" Lisa cried, her voice cutting through the tension. "We have to get out now." "Easy!" he snapped, trying to maintain some level of control. "We can't just run out there." But it was Jake who broke their fragile thread of resolve. What if he's been waiting for us to open the door? What if he's not even alone? The implication hung in the air like smoke, clinging to their throats. Mark's stomach lurched at the thought. What if there were more? Another figure lurking, another waiting in the shadows? The scratching escalated, and Mark instinctively stepped back, glancing toward the curtain. The van's headlights flickered, casting a brief, blinding flash across the room. Shadows danced wildly, and that moment of terror revealed the truth: the figure was not alone. Another silhouette moved around the van, lurking just beyond the light. "Stay quiet," Mark whispered, holding his breath. Then there was a pause, and for a fleeting second, they could hear the rhythmic plink of rain beginning to fall outside, a sound that felt almost calming. But as quickly as it came, it was swallowed by a sickening thud at the door, followed by an urgent voice. "Come on. Let me in. I can help you." Mark shot a bewildered glance back. Lisa's face was pale, her fear mixing with confusion. They remained still, processing the surreal twist of fate. Help? Or another trap? The pounding continued, frantic and desperate. "Mark. What do we do?" I don't know," he breathed, his voice shaky. He was losing control fast. He turned to the door, grappling with the decision. To trust or not to trust. The line between safety and danger blurred impossibly. Behind him, the room was heavy with anticipation as lightning flashed outside, illuminating the figure's face. In that moment, Mark saw the strange mix of fear and conviction in the newcomer's eyes. But what truth lay behind that plea for help? Would opening the door unleash their worst nightmare? Or was it the lifeline they so desperately needed? The air crackled with tension as the world beyond threatened to collapse in on them. What choice would they make as shadows closed in? The pounding intensified again, each thud like a hammer driving into Mark's chest, a relentless reminder of the sinister reality outside. "Mark, we can't just stay here." Lisa's voice was rising in pitch, panic clawing its way to the surface. She looked back at the door, where splintered wood echoed the urgency of their situation, uncertain shadows spilling in through the edges. The newcomer's voice called again, its desperation laced with something more primal. "Please. I swear I'm not with him. Trust me." "Trust?" Jake echoed hoarsely. "How do we even know who he is? What if he's luring us out?" Mark's throat tightened. What if it was a trap? But the surveillance from the shadows outside weighed heavily on his mind. The figure had been waiting, planning. He couldn't shake off the notion that each second wasted only drew them closer to a terrible fate. "Listen," he said, shaking slightly as he spoke. "If we open that door, we're risking everything. But if we don't, we're just sitting ducks." He confined his way in. Mark hesitated, glancing at the rundown room. The walls felt like they were closing in, the chipped paint appeared more like peeling skin, the floor creaked under the weight of their growing dread. "Mark!" Sarah whimpered, pressing against Lisa as though she could hide from the danger surrounding them. Mark sighed, torn between the images of the trembling girl and the unknown danger outside. A wave of warmth washed over him momentarily, but it was quickly drowned by the chill creeping from the door. "Okay," he finally managed, steeling himself. "We'll open the door, but we have to be ready for anything." Lisa's eyes widened, a mix of relief and fear passing through her. What if it's too late? What if he's already just stay together, he urged, gulping down his own terror as he stepped forward. He placed his trembling hand on the doorknob, the metal cold against his skin, as he locked eyes with each of them, delving deeply into the essence of their shared fear. Mark twisted the knob slowly, heart racing, mind screaming for him to stop. Just as the door creaked open a crack, the scratching sound escalated abruptly. A loud bang rattled the frail frame. The figure outside snapped into view, a shadow looming larger, framed by the faint light from the van. A sharp gasp escaped Mark's lips, blending with the others in a breathless symphony of panic. He barely had time to register the figure's distinct features. A gaunt face, hollow cheeks, eyes that shimmered too wide for a human-esque gaze. "Let me in." The voice was urgent, the panic evident. "I can save you. They're hunting you. They're all around." Before Mark could process what to do, a blast of thunder echoed outside, shaking the room. Then something far more sinister flashed through the window, a glimpse of more figures moving in the distance, creeping closer like wolves drawn in by the scent of blood. "Mark! Close it!" Lisa shouted, desperation spilling forth as another figure emerged in the shadows, its outline flickering like the memory of a nightmare yet to unfold. As they pulled back, Mark slammed the door shut, the relentless pounding from outside transformed into a furious chant of distorted voices. Walls that once seemed sturdy now felt like they'd collapse as he placed his back against the door, heart pounding like thunder. "What now?" Jake stammered, eyes darting between fear and resolve. "Now we find another way," Mark whispered, urgency sharpening his focus. The shadows converged, whispering secrets he couldn't fathom. And then, from deep within the darkness, a chilling chuckle rippled through the air, tightening the knot of dread in his stomach. "Running one save you." Mark's blood ran cold. What would that sound herald? Was there truly no escape? And as Lisa clutched at his jacket, he felt the darkness shift behind them, shadows lengthening as the door creaked under pressure. The looming threat didn't wait for answers. Could their desperation ignite a flicker of hope? Or would they discover a fate worse than death in the shadows closing in around them? The door rattled beneath Mark's weight, the chilling laughter echoing from the darkness creeping in around them. It was a sound that clawed at the edges of sanity, wrapping cold fingers around their throats. Each flicker of faint light seemed to reveal more shadows, and those shadows didn't just watch. They moved. "What are we going to do?" Sarah's voice trembled, barely above a whisper. The edges of her fear seemed to cut deeper than usual tonight, reflecting in her wide, terrified eyes. "We can't just wait to die here," Jake muttered, his hand balling into a fist. He looked to Mark, urgency weighing heavily on his voice. "Mark, we need to move. We need to find a way out." Mark's mind raced. He recalled every horror movie cliché, felt the imagery deep in his chest, as each one echoed an unmistakable truth: they were trapped. Outside, the cacophony of threatening whispers rose and swirled, growing frantic. Something was coming for them, and whatever it was would stop at nothing. "Listen." He said it as firmly as he could, fighting against despair. "We find a window, make a break for it. We can't let them get to us in here." Lisa gestured furiously towards a rickety old window in the far corner, the glass clouded by grime. "What if it's worse out there?" "It can't be worse than this," Mark cried, nearly losing his grip on his own sense of reason. "No. Don't say that." Sarah's panic escalated, a sob bubbling up from somewhere deep inside her. The shadows flickered in response, leaching color from the room as if they were feeding on their fear. "We've got to go now." Mark's conviction rose, pushing against their despair. He moved towards the window, his hand shaking as he gripped the old frame. The wooden slat screeched like a dying animal as he nudged it open, no more than a crack initially, praying it would provide a way out. A rush of cold air enveloped them, whispering secrets and cries from the world outside. Terrified shouts echoed at the edges of their minds: someone else was out there just like them. But was that salvation or just more danger? Mark, Look, Lisa's words trailed off as she pointed out into the night. What's that? More figures were emerging from the tree line, moving like shadowy phantoms. They shuffled with hollow movements, heads cocked at strange angles. There were at least 5 of them, each carrying something glimmering, knives reflecting the faintest moonlight. Mark's stomach plummeted. Close it! Jake yelled, grabbing Mark's arm with a grip like iron. Now! But it was too late. Whatever was outside was already aware of them. Mark froze, undecided between pulling the window shut and vulnerability in the dark. The shadows were fused with the moonlight, the figures undulating as they closed in, pooling like ink on the walls of his mind. Then came the sound from the door once again. The relentless pounding escalated into frantic hammering, loud enough to drown out the screams in his head. Mark! Lisa gasped, utterly white. The shadow nearest to them glanced towards the sound, the gleam of its knife sending a shiver down Mark's spine. Run! His brain shouted, but his body was still, caught in that moment, a cruel pause before the chaos. The doorknob rattled dangerously, a sound that shook him violently into action. Out the window! He shouted, urgency overriding instincts. They scrambled, pushing through the window as the door buckled against the weight of what lurked behind it. A scream tore itself free from Sarah's lips as they descended into the night, the split-second choice of escape leeching their last bit of safety. They hit the ground hard, scrambling to their feet, eyes glued to the chaos behind them. Shadows swirled around the door, blurred forms twitching and jerking unnaturally. Mark's heart beat like a war drum. They had made it outside, but the hunt had only just begun. Go! Run! Jake yelled, pulling Sarah along as Mark glanced back instinctively. But it was then he spotted something that froze him in place, a figure stepping through the door, eerily calm, as if this night was nothing more than a game. They were still being hunted. Mark, what's wrong? Lisa asked, fear etching deep lines across her face that he felt the weight of dread settle in his gut. The chase had started, but the true horror was what awaited them in the darkness. They had broken free, but were they even out of the woods? And as they darted down the narrow alley, the chilling laughter echoed behind them, a reminder that they were running towards an uncertain fate. What truths lay waiting in the shadows, waiting to encircle them once again? And more importantly, who or what was pulling the strings of their grim fate? The darkness swallowed them as they dashed away from the house, each footfall a frantic reminder of their mortality. They abandoned the alley, heartbeats pounding like thunder in their ears. Mark could barely see, but he sensed the figures trailing behind, restless shadows pursuing their every gasp and stumble. Left! This way! Jake shouted, yanking Sarah around the corner, the street lamp flickering above them. But its weak light cast long, eerie shapes, and the shadows danced ominously against the pavement. It felt as if the night itself was alive, a breathless predator stalking its prey. They sprinted toward an abandoned parking lot, graffiti-spattered walls closing in on them like a cage. Mark's lungs burned, and cold sweat dripped down his spine. Behind them, the laughter grew closer, raspy and conspiratorial, echoing off the walls in mocking waves. Where are they? Lisa gasped, glancing over her shoulder as they rounded a battered Honda, the headlights cracked, dark glass staring at them like empty eyes. The feeling of being hunted was palpable, each breath a reminder of their doom. They're right there, just keep running. Mark yelled, feeling the urge to scream, to cry out for help. But there was nobody here, just them and the encroaching terror. They reached an old building with peeling paint, the front door ajar, revealing a pitch-black interior. Should we hide? Sarah asked, her voice trembling. Mark hesitated. The darkness beckoned. No, it could be worse in there, he said, though doubt gnawed at him. What could be worse than the chilling figures hunting them down? Suddenly, a loud crash echoed behind them. Jake turned, eyes wide. Mark, we don't have time. Mark felt an overwhelming urge to turn and look, but instead, he seized Sarah's wrist and pulled her towards the door. Into the building. We have to try. They rushed through the doorway as the shadows closed in. Inside, the atmosphere shifted, stale air filled with the smell of decay. It looked like an old warehouse, machinery rusting into the floor, spidery webs clutching corners, silent as tombs. "Where do we go?" Lisa whispered, her voice quaking. It wrapped around Mark like a weighted blanket. He surveyed their options. Cages of metal loomed like twisted nightmares, and he could hear water dripping somewhere in the distance, each drop amplifying the thick silence. "Keep quiet," he ordered. They moved deeper inside, relying on the scant light filtering through broken windows. Suddenly, a shadow darted past, fast and sleek, darting between the stacks of metal beams. A flicker of movement and it was gone. Mark felt himself tense up, trying to decipher if it was one of their pursuers or just a trick of the mind. "Did you see that?" Sarah whispered, her eyes wide, darting nervously around. "Shoo!" Jake hissed, just as the laughter echoed through the building, bouncing off the walls, a grotesque symphony that seemed to delight in their fear. Mark's heart raced. They couldn't stay here. The walls felt like they were closing in. "We need to find a way out," he said, forcing a calm he didn't feel. "If they're outside, we need to be ready." But before they could move, a heavy thud echoed nearby, the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching shards of glass. They froze, the hairs on the back of Mark's neck tingling. "Maybe they don't know we're here," Lisa suggested, though her voice wavered. "Or maybe they do," Jake said grimly. "We need to split up, confuse them." "No," Mark said sharply. "That's the worst idea. We stay together." But the footsteps grew louder, and there came a low murmur, words barely intelligible yet dripping with malice. Mark pressed against a pitted wall, the shadows creeping closer. His mind raced. Had they made it inside, only to be cornered here? In that moment, the lights flickered, a brief surge before plunging them into darkness. Panic surged within him as he could barely catch his breath. "Where are you?" he called, fear crawling into his voice, feeling the shadows close in. "Mark." He heard Sarah's voice from the opposite side of the room, panic-slicked and desperate. Then came the laughter again, this time not from outside. It resonated inside, sounding warped and gleeful, twisting through the empty spaces, growing louder and louder. Everything fell away in the chaos. It felt suffocating. There was no way out. And just then, the deadened silence was shattered, not by screams nor struggle, but by a slow, smooth voice weaving through the shadows. "You thought you could escape?" Mark's blood ran cold. Everything came crashing down: the pursuit, the darkness, the laughter. It was all tailored for them, what lay hidden in the dark. Who had been orchestrating this nightmare all along? As dread settled deeper, they would have to confront the truth of their situation before it devoured them whole. The night's secrets were breathing, and they were right next to them. Was it too late to change their fate? Mark's heart pounded like a relentless war drum, echoing in the stifling darkness. The smooth voice slithered through the shadows, each word a razor against his spine. He felt Sarah's presence retreating, her breaths quick and shallow. She sounded lost, disoriented in the dark, just like him. "Stay close," he shouted, though his voice quavered. The thought of being separated terrified him more than the shape lurking somewhere in the blackness. They needed to regroup, but the oppressive gloom swallowed his words whole. "Where are you?" Jake called, panic seeping into his tone. The rustle of footsteps continued, slow and deliberate. Each crunch of glass underfoot felt like an omen, a warning. Suddenly, the lights flickered back to life, illuminating the vast emptiness around them. There was nothing but broken machinery and dust-covered floors. Each of them stood still, eyes wide, searching for answers too elusive to grasp. "Did anyone see where it went?" Lisa whispered, her voice shaking, betraying a fear that licked at their heels. The moment she spoke, laughter erupted again, the sound rippling through the air, intertwining with their dread. Mark closed his eyes tightly, trying to block out the noise. "We need to stick together," he urged, though his own words fell heavy, weighed down by uncertainty. That voice, it could be a trap. But as he opened his eyes once more, the lights dimmed again, and that chilling laugh returned, so close it sent a jolt of ice through him. Panic overwhelmed his rational thought, and he felt it rising, like bile. "I can't do this," he mumbled, a mix of sorrow and anger boiling within him. "Let us find a door," Jake yelled, breaking the veil of shadows. "If we can just find a way out with urgency." They turned and stumbled down a narrow hallway filled with decaying machinery, the smell of oil mingling with rot. Mark led the way, every step filled with unease. His pulse quickened as they pushed forward, the laughter crescendoing behind them like a grotesque song, promising doom. "Did you hear that?" Sarah gasped, interrupting the heaviness that cloaked them. Before Mark could respond, a loud crash shattered the silence, metal clanging against concrete. It sounded close, too close. "Run!" he shouted, not waiting for their responses as he propelled himself forward, dragging Sarah along. They tore through the maze of machinery, desperate for any escape. Mark could hear their breaths, frantic and yearning. A jagged shard of glass glinted in the flickering light, and he risked a glance back. There it was, a figure, dark and shapeless, darting quickly between the shadows, moving with predatory grace. "Faster!" Jake urged, as Lisa stumbled, nearly falling. "We can't let it catch up." It was a dance of survival, a game of life and death. Mark rounded another corner, heart racing, only to stop dead in his tracks. Ahead, a wall loomed, too solid, too unforgiving. They reached the end of the line. "Mark, what now?" Sarah cried, terror glistening in her wide eyes. Sweat trickled down her temple, gritting his teeth. Mark glanced back toward their pursuer, feeling the black eyes on them, hungry and expectant. "We fight." Laughter again echoed through the rotting building, but this time, it was accompanied by another shadow, an unyielding presence that loomed closer, cutting off their retreat. A split-second decision clawed at the back of Mark's mind, fight or flee, but just as he steeled himself, the light sparked to life, revealing a figure, a woman, with hollow eyes and a smile that split her face wider than any human should bear. "Not so fast," she purred, voice sweet and sinister. The others gasped behind him, feet frozen to the floor, and as Mark's eyes widened, understanding dawned. This was no mere enemy. They were in a web, tightly spun and woven with nightmares. They hadn't just stumbled into danger, they had walked willingly into a predatory snare. "Let us see how you dance when the lights go out again," she taunted, snapping her fingers. The world dimmed once more, plunging them back into suffocating dark. "Mark!" Sarah's voice cried. Out, now panicked. The laughter enveloped them, drowning out everything else. Deep in that darkness, Mark felt dread crawl under his skin. Had they truly entered a nightmare with no end? Or was there a way to break free from the trap set just for them? And just as a sharp whisper rolled through the shadows, promising unspeakable things, Mark knew they had to act before fear consumed them whole, before the final curtain dropped, leaving them trapped in darkness forever. But would they have the courage to confront the deepest horrors of their fate? Or had the deeper shadows already taken hold? Mark's breath came in ragged gasps, the darkness pressing in on him like a heavy shroud. Fear surged, boiling in his chest as sweat trickled down his back. The laugh echoed again, sinister and mocking, reverberating through the void that surrounded them. He felt the suffocating grip of despair tightening, constricting around his very soul. "Stay together. We can't let her separate us," he managed to say, though it felt futile. The darkness twisted his words, wrapping them in shadows that threatened to swallow them whole. The other voices whispered through the gloom, panic sharpening their edges. He could hear Sarah's muffled whimper, Jake's frantic breathing, and Lisa's nervous shuffling. But they were all lost in this abyss, each alone in their thoughts, almost paralyzed by fear. Mark wished he could see their faces, find hope in their eyes. But the obsidian black was relentless. Mark felt something cold brush past him, a whiff of stale air mixed with rot. He flinched, instinctively stepping back, but the whisper brushed against his ear again, too soft to understand yet too horrifying to ignore. It was as if the darkness itself was alive, reaching in, wrapping around him, and then, the lights flickered back to life, illuminating the hideous woman who had ensnared them. Her smile twisted wider, stretching beyond human possibility, her eyes gleaming with the promise of torment. Shadows danced on her face, creating caricatures of horror more hideous than he could stand. "Hello, my dear guests," she drawled, her voice weaving a web of dread. "Did you really think you could escape? We're not your guests." Mark shouted, an ounce of defiance igniting within him. "You can't keep us here." "Oh, but I can," she teased, her lips curling mockingly. "The real question is how long will you survive?" The lights began to flicker again, swirling between brightness and darkness like a dying flame. Mark could almost feel the walls closing in, a creeping sense of claustrophobia settling deep in his bones. He turned quickly, the fear purging any thoughts of bravery. "Run!" he shrieked, grabbing Sarah's arm. He could feel the density of the darkness behind them, moving like a living entity, thirsty for their terror. They darted back down the corridor, relying on desperation to propel them forward. "Where do we go?" Jake yelled, his voice fraying as panic swept through the group again. "Just keep moving," Mark cried back. They raced down the hallway, weaving around rusting machinery that loomed like forgotten giants. The echo of their panicked footsteps ricocheted off the walls, a soundtrack to their horror. Ahead, they spotted a flicker of light, a distant glow flickering uncertainly from an exit sign. Relief surged through Mark. "There!" he yelled, pushing past the others with a burst of adrenaline, but then the laughter returned, sharper this time, more condescending. "Going somewhere?" The woman reappeared ahead, her form somehow more menacing, more real. She blocked their path, the light casting sharp shadows that danced on her wretched features. Mark faltered, fear collapsing his confidence. "What do you want from us?" he spat, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. "Only to entertain myself, dear. Watching you squirm is simply delightful," she said, her smile widening impossibly, revealing teeth that glimmered in the light. With a sudden, commanding gesture, she snapped her fingers again, plunging them all back into suffocating darkness. This time it felt thicker, pressing against him, suffocating in its malevolence. "I can't breathe." Lisa's voice trembled. Mark reached for her, desperately trying to anchor her to reality. "Don't let go," he urged, as the laughter circled around them like a storm, teasing their sanity. The sound enveloped them, leaving him dizzy, disoriented, the air thick and heavy with terror. "Mark, we have to find a way out," Sarah pleaded, her quivering voice breaking through the chaos. But the darkness was alive, and it felt like it had teeth, biting into their courage, gnawing at their hope. Would they find a door? Could they break free of this chilling dance? Or would they remain entrapped in this sinister game, their screams lost in the shadows forever? As the laughter intensified, a thought struck: could they turn the tables? What if they fought back? The question lingered in the icy air, heavy with consequence. Would fear transform into fury, igniting a spark strong enough to fight back? Or would they crumble under the weight of darkness? Mark felt the darkness shift around him, as if it were alive, wrapping tighter, squeezing the air from his lungs. The laughter morphed into a deep rumble, pulsating through the very ground they stood on. "Did you think you could escape?" Her voice, now a vicious hiss, echoed through the void. "Stay close," Mark urged, gripping Sarah's arm tighter. They stumbled through the obscurity as fear became their only guide. Each step felt like an act of defiance against a force that wanted to drag them into the abyss. "Where do we go?" Jake's voice cracked, panic invading his tone. There was no way to ensure they wouldn't be separated, not in this hellish darkness. They pressed on, driven by sheer survival instinct, colliding with cold metal and slipping on damp earth. Shadows could be seen flicking past like restless spirits, mocking their desperation. The faint memory of the flickering exit sign was a beacon they clung to, but it seemed to fade with each passing second. Then, a sudden light flickered to life like a firefly igniting in the night. It was blinding for just a moment, and they squinted against its brilliance. But the light did not last. It whipped away as quickly as a thought, leaving them again in gnarled blackness. "Mark, we need a plan." Sarah's voice trembled, hiding beneath her desperation was that fierce spark of determination they needed. Together they stumbled away from the laughter, their feet rushing through the accumulated darkness. "We can't let her see us break," Mark shouted, rage and fear intertwining, binding him to this moment. "What if we confront her?" "What? You think that will work?" Lisa scoffed, but her voice was drenched in mingled disbelief and a flicker of hope. Mark didn't answer right away. What if fear turned into anger? What if they stopped running? "Let us find her," he barked. "If she wants a game, we'll give her one. We either fight or we die here." The others exchanged glances, still hesitant. But deep inside them was that primal urge to survive, to reclaim the moment. "Okay," Jake finally rasped, "what do we do?" Mark led the way back into the black. Every footfall felt like an inching heartbeat, vibrating through the emptiness. They were swimming through nightmares, fighting their instinct to flee. "Remember, we're stronger together," Mark said, a desperate mantra, trying to keep the cohesion alive. The laughter broke out again, louder now, echoing off the walls with malicious fervor. "I smell fear, my darlings." Deliciously intoxicating. Mark felt cold dread creeping back in. "Stay together." As they continued to move, the walls began to pulse. There was a sense of rhythm, a shudder that mimicked the sound of a heartbeat alive and watching. The laughter morphed into a cacophony, pulling at their sanity, tugging them apart. "Find her. We confront her now," Mark shouted, pushing forward. They needed to reclaim control over their fate. A flicker of light, a distorted silhouette. "You think you can play my game?" The woman's voice rolled through the shadows, like molten venom. "You are puppets on strings to me." Mark closed his eyes for just a moment, summoning courage. He turned sharply to face the creeping darkness. "We aren't your puppets," he screamed, voice shaking, challenging the shadows. The laughter stopped abruptly, stunned silence enveloping them. Something twisted in the air, suffocating and thick, pressed against their chests. As the beat of her laughter returned, it felt different, angrier, as if they had crossed an unseen line. The darkness grew thicker, more consuming. Prepare to be entertained in ways you can't even imagine. Mark realized they may have unleashed something even more terrible. The dark surged forward, swallowing them whole again. What had they awakened? Would they become part of her twisted game, or could they escape? Despair clung to them like a second skin as they fought the enveloping shadows, but the question loomed above them, unrelenting. The deep silence was shattered as the darkness surged forward with a hunger, promising despair and doom. Mark felt it wrap around them, an entity alive and aware, feeding off their fear. "Stay together," he roared, adrenaline electrifying his voice as they stumbled through the oppressive shadows. Panic thrummed in their veins. A cacophony of haunting laughter echoed off the walls, chilling them to the bone. The walls pulsed, reverberating as if the sinister space had a heartbeat, each thump a reminder of their vulnerability. "Mark, what is happening?" Sarah's voice trembled, thick with unease. "Keep moving," Mark urged. The light flickered again, casting ghostly shapes that clawed at their sanity. They pressed onward, hearts racing as they neared the dimmed exit sign they remembered. Suddenly, the dark silhouette of the gaunt woman emerged, her face twisted in glee. "Running away? You think it's that simple?" she teased, her voice a smooth, malevolent whisper. Mark exchanged a determined glance with Lisa. "Not this time. Together," he shouted. They purposely closed in as she approached, an army fueled by sheer resolve. Mark felt like a warrior ready for battle. "Don't you see?" she sneered, stepping closer. "Fear is your friend here. Surrender to it." "Never," Mark shouted. "You don't control us." And with that, they charged at her. They pushed through the sludge of horror, adrenaline overruling the instinct to flee. They could do this together, they had to. In an unexpected moment of clarity, the lights blasted to full brightness. Mark saw her distorted grin mirrored in their own revulsion as they shouted, "No more games." The adrenaline surged through each of them, it felt electric. Mark lunged forward, hands outstretched, waiting for the moment to push through the shadows with unwavering courage. They were the last flickers of humanity in a place designed to suck it out. The air grew heavier, and the laughter faltered, showing cracks. "You think you can defy me?" She snarled, but there was an undeniable tremor in her voice now. "Yes, we can." Jake yelled, feeling empowered, buoyed by the strength of family. As they moved in synchrony, the gaunt figure faltered, and in that split second, Mark seized the opportunity. He thrust his arm against her icy cold body, feeling an electric shock travel through him as her laughter turned into a strangled gasp. "No!" she cried, the smile wavering, becoming something grotesque. "Now!" Mark shouted, as they pressed past her and dove into the narrow exit they saw through the haze. Hope surged through them like flames igniting after years of suffocation. They burst through the door and into the night, a cacophony of fresh air hitting them like a wave, breaking the chains of despair. They staggered into the moonlit parking lot, breathless and alive, but the laughter trailed behind them, a sinister promise echoing in the distance. Mark whispered, "We did it. We escaped." The weight of oppression lifted, if only for a moment. As the family raced toward their minivan, they piled inside, slamming the doors as fear chased them. Mark turned the key, the engine roared to life, and they sped away from the abominable dark. The distance between them and that wretched place grew with each passing second. "I don't ever want to take a road trip again," Jake murmured, his voice faltering. "Never, ever," Sarah echoed, face pale but alive with relief, but Lisa squeezed Mark's hand tightly, her eyes glistening with that spark of resilience that had almost been snuffed out. "We made it together. No matter what they throw at us, we're stronger." As the shadows receded into the rearview mirror, laughter from the darkness lingering just beyond, Mark felt that fire burning brightly in him too. No dark entity, no mental struggle could ever extinguish their bond. With adrenaline coursing through their veins and the strength of family in their hearts, they knew they had survived not just a night of terror, but a testament of faith, courage, and resilience. And as dawn broke on the horizon, spilling golden light over the road, Mark dared to hope, perhaps there would be more adventures ahead if they faced them together. After everything, there was a flicker of hope beneath layers of fear, igniting a determination. They would shine brighter than the darkness ever could. If you've enjoyed this nerve-wracking journey, now is your moment. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that chill you to the bone. Smash that like button now, it fuels the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and reactions about the ending. Tell me how you'd have handled this terrifying road trip. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let us keep the storytelling going.